I'm very excited about this. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's just jump right into it. In 2008, 2009, global financial crisis happens. That's when you started Gelt, I believe.
Correct. That's when we got started.
Did you think the housing bubble is bursting, now's a good time to invest in real estate and I should get in, and it was like a master plan? Or was it like, I need to do something, this is interesting, let me get started, and just happened to be a good time? Like, how much of it was intentional versus serendipitous?
So the intentional part was my cousin was out in a city called Bakersfield, California, 2 hours north of LA, and they got hit by the housing bust even first before LA started dropping. And he said, wow, these like 4-unit buildings that previously sold for 500 grand, we could pick up for 150 grand. So they were 25 cents on the dollar ish. And I'm like, it's a no brainer. If you could rent out like 2 of the units, you're cash flowing. 3 or 4 units, you're cash flowing like a pig. So it was sort of like, you know, we didn't plan on building a huge enterprise, but we started with one and it seemed like a good opportunity. And then we're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then we did another one and it just built on itself, you know?
What were the mistakes you made in the first one? Everyone makes mistakes in the beginning.
Yeah.
What were the things that you look back now and you're like, man, I was so dumb, I didn't know X?
Yeah, I think some of the most important lessons we learned early on were, just because something's cheap doesn't make it a good investment. So these buildings were in the roughest parts of town. It was all we could have afforded back in the day. And, you know, it was a great learning experience, cutting our teeth, you know, renovating these dilapidated buildings, leasing them out. But the tenants were really rough on the units. We dealt with a lot of vacancy issues, Section 8 kind of tenants. It was just a different ball game. And then we started, you know, buying in a little higher quality areas. And on paper, the returns didn't look as good, but they actually were much better, the returns, because of the quality of the tenants and the underlying real estate.
At what point do you say, hey, we want to go from just buying things that we can afford to like, let's go build an actual business here and raise capital and like operationalize this?
Yeah, I mean, it was a full year. We bought the first fourplex and then another one, and then we brought in one investor and then another. And it was a year of buying these little 4-unit buildings. And a full year later, I spoke to a few different people in the business, and they're like, you could create a real sizable, scalable business doing this, like real estate syndication business. So we went out and we bought a 78-unit building, and people asked, how did you make that jump? Essentially, I brought on 2 gray hair partners that helped me. One being my father, he helped us qualify for the larger loans because we didn't have the balance sheet, we couldn't qualify. He helped us by, his law firm did all the legal work, and then he helped us with his reputation by bringing in family friends to invest with us or clients of his firm. And then we brought in another gentleman named Adrian who had a lot of experience running larger multifamily properties. So we put together a little group of 8 people. We went and bought this 78-unit building in Bakersfield. At the time, it was like $3.9 million. We raised $1.3 million of equity from around 8 people. Our like acquisition fee, we just rolled back into the deal, didn't really take any money out. And that's how we learned, just with good mentors and partners, and you know, just kept rinsing and repeating one deal at a time.
How much harder is it to do a 4-unit acquisition for 78-unit acquisition?
So I always tell newcomers, it's the same amount of time and energy to buy and renovate and oversee a small building as compared to a big one. In some circumstances, the bigger ones are actually easier to operate because they have on-site professional management and the maintenance techs on-site, and it's more efficiently run, actually. And you can make more money, you know, the bigger the property versus the smaller ones. So we've just been, over the years, pushing the envelope, trying to buy larger and larger properties, and it's worked. Yeah.
And how did you think? You said it was about $3.9 million. You raised $1.3 million in equity, and then took out debt for the rest. How did you think about the ratio there, and why that specific ratio?
Yeah, we kept it. At the time, you could have got higher leverage loans just because the cash flows were so great and prices were pretty depressed. We always stress test the deals, and we're like, okay, what happens if rents drop, 5, 10, 15, 20%? What happens if occupancy drops, from 96 to 88 or whatever? And, when does that break-even point occur? And then when are you in the negative? And we're very conservative. We raise a lot of extra money up front. So if there is a time when there's downturn, and like we had in 2020, we've been doing this now 13 years. We never had any months where we actually were in the negative until COVID hit, and then collections started suffering on 2 or 3 properties. We were in the negative, but instead of going to investors and being like, we need to cover the mortgage payment, we had ample reserves in each bank account to fund that, for extended period of time. But I'm rambling on a little here.
Well, when you think about it's interesting, right? Like, you go and you raise extra equity up front. What does that do to the financial return? Does that improve the return, or is there?
It lowers it a tiny bit, but what we my pitch to investors is it's capital preservation. I never want to take a permanent loss of capital. In the game of compounding, it kills your returns by having that permanent loss, right? So instead of hitting a 15 IRR, I'd be happy with a 14 IRR and just consistently not ever having a zero. You don't want to, it's a different game than the VC game where you actually want zeros. You want to take the highest risk and, invest in companies that are out there and maybe other people don't see something. And sure, a lot of them are going to go to zero, and that's why you do it as a portfolio. You have a lot of them, 20, 30, 40, whatever, angel investments, VC. In real estate, it's like, you're not going to hit the 100x, 1000x, but you're going to have, over 10 years, 3x, 4x, maybe 5x. And if you bought in 09, some buildings could be a 10x with cash flow and equity appreciation, but also all the tax benefits, which a lot of people don't understand, using depreciation and the ability to 1031 exchange. And
we're going to get to taxes in a second. Before we do that, talk to me about what the average return looks like. So when you guys go buy, now you guys are buying hundreds of units in a single property. Is this something where you guys go in and say, hey, our down the fairway, a great deal looks like we buy X number of units and it's a 3X return in 5 years? Like, how do you think about this is what we're looking for?
Yeah, our strategy's changed a little since inception. So like 09, 10, 11, we were buying a lot of buildings that were older, built in the 60s, 70s. That's where we saw the opportunity. Over the years, we found it was hard to hold those buildings long term. They were just getting really old and had major, plumbing issues and, big repair, big ticket items. And now in the last few years, we've been exchanging those into like 2010 and newer buildings primarily that we could hold longer term they don't have those capital needs. Plus the return profile, we're pretty similar between the newer ones and the older ones. So we're taking the time to prune the portfolio, sell off a lot of those older buildings, exchange into the newer ones. And also geographically, we're heading back to California where, the headlines, political risk, people are leaving, yada, yada. But risk adjusted, now the returns are actually higher there than in other markets like a Phoenix or Vegas.
Why? Why are the returns better?
People are scared that, and right now Phoenix is on fire and rents are growing, but it's always been historically a very boom and bust market, same as Vegas. When it's Vegas relies on the gaming sector, for the economy, and Phoenix has diversified a good amount, and there's a ton of people moving there. But if you look back historically, during the last recession, rents dropped 20% in Phoenix from peak to trough. And there were buildings that were, half vacant. They had an immigration bill passed. Around 100,000 people left the city. It was blood in the street. And that's when we went in there in 09, 10. I'm sure we'll be back into these markets when there's the next correction. It's cyclical. It's going to happen again at some point. I don't know when and how, but
Yeah. When you look at buying one of these properties, how much of it is, hey, we just want to buy the property, we want to get the cash flow, the tax benefits, and then the capital appreciation versus, I think you guys have also built other companies that service firms like yourself, but also service properties. Like, how do you think about almost like the empire building aspect of this?
Yeah. So I am pretty always thinking and opportunistic and curious, and we did other asset classes. So like we were into the mobile home park space for a while. We bought 8 mobile home parks. We bought an RV park in Monterey that did really well. What I've learned over the years is really focus. And, if you focus, it'll just compound and your energy and everything will be on that one thing. So we did well on those mobile home parks for the most part, but it just took away our energy from our core business of, buying apartment buildings, building apartment buildings. We also started doing self-storage, which has actually done really well. We're probably going to continue just, doing that, a couple deals a year, every year on that front as well. But I've learned that concentration and focus is really important. We did start a company called Demuso, I think you were alluding to. So we saw a big need in our industry to help the property managers and landlords go 100% digital collections of rent. Right now, people have a checkbook sometimes just to pay one check a month rent. Otherwise, why even have that checkbook? It's so antiquated. So we're helping our management companies and other ownership groups like ourselves help transfer them to digital age and go 100% digital collections. We're active on 350,000 units, so Gelt is a customer, but we have a lot of the other top 50 like property management companies as customers, and we're processing north of $5 billion a year in rental payments, and that company's growing really quickly. I'm not involved in the day-to-day, but we help seed it. I'm on the board, and we just saw a need in our space to do that.
Yeah.
Opportunity, yeah.
I had Chris from Fort on, and,
Yeah.
and one of the things that he said that I just stuck with me was he's like, look, I spent a lot of time company building, right? Like I'm an investor, and when we buy real estate, you strike me as very similar as well. Like there's a lot of other things other than just like, is this a good deal or is it not? There's fundraising, there's organization, there's hiring, there's all these things. Talk to me about that aspect of what you do on a day-to-day basis. Like where do you spend the most amount of your time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the beginning, it was just me and my cousin. We had to do everything ourselves. But even from then, we sort of delegated well. He was more of the, call it the inside guy, dealing with the actual construction of the property and rehab and dealing with the contractors. And I was more of the outside guy dealing with the brokers and fundraising and the lawyers. And so we had good division of labor from the beginning. And then we just kept hiring up one person at a time where we needed where we weren't the best at that and it wasn't the best use of our time. So we hired asset managers and then accounting people and acquisitions and just kept growing where we had holes and where also our time wasn't best spent. So a lot of people get stuck in micromanaging and doing everything themselves, but it limits the type of organization you could build. So today, you fast forward to today, my role 100% is just fundraising pretty much. When we're buying a building at the end, we have the investment committee, we discuss, my partners and I, but ultimately I'm really just involved in fundraising. I'm not involved in the asset management, operationally. I have a partner that oversees the staff. I have a partner that oversees like construction management, and I'm pretty much focused on just fundraising for these deals. Real estate is very capital intensive.
Yeah.
You got to have a lot of cash to buy it.
You're popular on Twitter. That's the first time I ever came across you.
Thank you.
It is talk to me about the fundraising strategy. Where have you found success and what hasn't worked?
Yeah, so man, I mean, when we first started, my cousin Damien and I were in the car listening to Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and like we're figuring out how do we raise our first $100,000 to buy these little fourplexes, and it was like, wow, we didn't know, we had never raised money before, but raising money is really an art, and I think I keep learning every day and how to master that art. I think we started with family, friends, and then clients of my dad's, and my sphere of influence, you start with your circles. Like I'm in LA, I'm in the Jewish community, I'm in YPO, I'm in Tiger 21, and now Twitter opens the audience to the world, right? So I've been meeting people from all walks of life and in different parts of the country that I would never have gotten in front of. And I'm not salesy at all. I just like to talk about what I do, educate people. And if they're interested in participating, then they could reach out to me. And we have a lot of people that have reached out from those kind of mediums, LinkedIn, Twitter. I go on podcasts like yourself, and I meet really cool people like that I become friends with from that.
What does the normal process look like? So you guys identify a deal, you say, this is interesting. Do you have to fundraise before you go put the LOI? Do you just walk me through how do you actually acquire it? And then what does the timeline and sequence look like from a fundraising standpoint?
Yeah. So the process is, we get my acquisition guy, we look at 100 deals. Out of 100 deals, we'll maybe offer on 5 to 10 and hopefully get one, awarded to us. Once we're awarded a deal, we're negotiating a purchase and sale agreement. We simultaneously are doing all of our physical inspections, lease file audit, due diligence. We're putting together the offering memorandum. Once that's done, we send that out to the investor base. So it's literally an email blast that goes to, we have around 14 or 1,500 current investors. And then I have another maybe 3,000 people that have voiced interest that just haven't pulled the trigger yet. Once we send that out, it's sort of like a first come, first served commit. And then usually we call the funds within a few weeks. If anyone's late past the deadline, we then open it up to the waiting list to make it fair for other people that didn't get in, but we're a little too slow to commit. And then we close on the transaction usually around 60 days from inception, from signing the contract to close. I'd say we it's a little scary raising money deal by deal because we don't have quote unquote discretionary committed capital like a fund would. So we take on some risk, but we have large lines of credit and our own cash to backfill if we ever are short on a raise, which typically doesn't happen anymore, but it still could theoretically. And our deals are getting bigger and bigger, so we have to keep ample liquidity to be able to do that just in case.
Why not raise a discretionary fund?
It's a great question. So I think a fund with tax-paying people, I don't think real estate is a good vehicle to do a fund. I think for VC and private equity, for real estate, I think it should be done deal by deal because you never really, if you do sell, you always want a 1031 exchange and roll that over to defer paying the tax. I think if you're in a fund, it's like a 10-year lifespan, and then boom, you have to sell all the assets. Why sell these golden geese laying golden eggs? Real estate's like a generational kind of thing. You want to, I'm not into the never sell camp because we do sell occasionally, but don't sell ever and return money, because then you have the capital gain tax plus something called recapture. So all the money you've been saving in taxes over the years from the depreciation comes to a head, and then you got to pay that out. So like, let the money compound without the tax man getting his pound of flesh, right? And that way we could do this doing deal by deal. In a fund, it's a 10-year thing, and it would make it easier fundraising, like getting committed capital and then calling it over time and stuff. And then also on a fund, you have to deploy the capital within a certain amount of time, and you're gonna be doing deals you probably shouldn't be doing. You're in a fund business versus like a real estate business.
Let's talk about the tax benefits of real estate. So when you go and you acquire one of these large apartment complexes, what are the benefits you get up front in terms of you make the purchase and within some, 60, 90, 120 days, what are the benefits?
Yeah, you have something called depreciation, and what we do is cost segregation, accelerated depreciation. You pay for a report, like I think we use CBRE or other firms, and they'll break down the components of the building into different 10-year lifespan. And it accelerates the depreciation. So you create really large losses in the first year, and you could use that those losses to offset any income from real estate income. If you're not a real estate professional, if you're a real estate professional, you could use those losses against any income. So I always recommend, if someone could qualify as a real estate professional, they should talk to their CPA and figure out if they could do that.
What is the definition of that?
The biggest hurdle is like the hours. You have to spend like over 700 hours a year. But I know people that have married, real estate professionals, and then like they use the losses from the real estate against their spouse's income from whatever they do, and it's it's a pretty effective way to save money, and it's legal. Yeah.
What is the depreciation that you get from? You use these cost segregation studies, and for those that don't know, the doors. Okay, we're going to depreciate that over 10 years rather than 30. We're going to the windows, the doorknobs, like all kinds of crazy stuff. If you buy something for, let's say, $100 million, what is the percentage usually that you can get?
It depends on the location, how much building versus land. You can't depreciate the land, but a real life example: we bought a building in Ventura, California. It was around $12 million purchase price. It created losses in the first year of around $3 million, which means you could use, like, if you have $3 million of income, if you're a real estate professional, you could use that $3 million of losses, and it wipes that out completely. Or if you're not a real estate professional, you could use it against other real estate income.
Yeah.
So, and that flows through to our investors. Like, let's say, an investor puts in 5% of the money on a deal, they get 5% of those losses on their K1. And we've had deals for many years that are still showing losses. The first year you create that huge loss with that cost seg, but then I think it's over 27 and a half years if it's like a multifamily kind of building. It's on a straight line depreciation schedule. And it's pretty wild.
So right after the initial purchase, you get the cost segregation study, you get the big bonus depreciation. And then what are the tax benefits as you continue owning that property?
Yeah, it drops from that first year, but it's still like, the over 27 and a half year, and if you spend a lot of money doing the rehab and stuff, you could write that off also. So it's we've had buildings 5-6 years that, even though they're throwing off 7, 8, 9, 10, 15%, whatever cash flow, they're still showing losses because of that line item. It's a phantom expense. You're not actually spending it, but you expense it. And eventually, when you sell the building, if you take the cash, you'll have to, all those savings of the taxes over the years, it's called recapture, you then have to pay it. But if you exchange and don't take any money, roll 100% of the proceeds into a like-size property. It's like same size or larger. You have to replace the debt essentially, and the equity. And you just keep kicking the can down the road. And then when you pass, there's a step up in basis for your errors and stuff, which is pretty remarkable.
This is the game.
This is the game, man. The rich play this game, and
yes.
Anyone that's an accredited investor, you're saving money. I recommend parking money in real estate with good sponsors. You could buy your own properties too. We have investors that purchase their own properties and invest with us. There's no right or wrong.
Explain in more detail the 1031 exchange, because I think a lot of people don't understand how much of a game changer this is.
Yeah, I'll give a real life example. So 6 years ago, we bought a large property in Denver for $74 million. It was like 500 some units. And we just sold it in January of this year for $141 million. So it was a huge gain. The investors, I don't know, maybe 4x plus net of our fees and stuff, they had the opportunity to roll that into a brand new building we bought in downtown Long Beach that was in lease up. And most investors will roll with us into the next opportunity, and they didn't pay any taxes on that. And over time, our goal, we could pull out principal through refinancing events, which when these loans come due, you have to pay it off. So you either get a new loan or sell the property. We'll get a new loan and pull out cash, hopefully get a bigger loan than the previous loan. And those dollars also are tax deferred. It's refi proceeds, loan proceeds. It's not considered income. So that way is another way to get money and principal out. I know people that have had buildings 30 years that, they pull out so much money on these things, and
they still have the asset.
And they still have the asset. Yeah, I have a mentor that bought a building 30 years ago for $3 million, maybe put $600,000 down, him and his investors. And now every year the property throws off $3 million. It's pretty remarkable. Plus, he's pulled out millions and millions of dollars. It's the ultimate long game for preserving wealth and growing wealth safely. Best risk-adjusted returns in my mind.
Why do they have the tax code like this?
That's something I could assume it's just because the voting people, the people with the money, they lobby for this.
Is it that, or is it because they actually want to incentivize investment? Or maybe those are the two same things, right?
It does incentivize investment for sure. And this type of investment, I legally take advantage of whatever is legal tax-wise, push the envelope and make sure it's kosher and legal. And this is all in the tax code, and we're doing it.
Yeah, one of the messages that we have for people almost on a daily basis is there's this thing in America where people are like, oh, the tax people, the rich people aren't paying taxes, they're not paying taxes. And it's like, hold on a second. There's not two tax books. There's not like rich people get one set of rules and other people get a different set of rules. It's the code is there for everyone to use.
Correct.
Now, there are things where, hey, you got to own a business. Well, okay, people figured out if I own a business, I get certain things, or I got to own real estate, or, it's not just if you are a W-2 employee, you have all these things available to you. You have to put yourself in a position to benefit from certain rules, but the rules are there. And so you said it earlier, it's like, rich people are doing this, like go learn how to do it, and then you can do exactly what they're doing. Like the rules are available to you as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. They make it a little tougher though for we only can work with accredited investors, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to earn, I think it's over $250,000 a year, or have a net worth of $1 million, excluding your personal residence. There's still millions and millions of people that will qualify for that, but they make it harder. I think you have to go through certain procedures to be able to accept money from non-accredited investors, which some sponsors do and stuff, but definitely, once you become accredited, it opens the doors to that. But yeah, to build wealth, I think Naval had a great thread on this, talking about how to create wealth. And it's literally owning equity, creating a business, investments. It's tough when you're W-2 for sure you pay a lot in taxes, but everything, if you were able to save, should be invested in over a long period of time. If you do the math and compound it, market, 8 to 10% kind of returns. If you invest in indexes, it creates wonders over a long period of time.
Talk to me about the current real estate environment. Like obviously we had a 0% interest rate environment, mortgages, et cetera, was so cheap. They were trying to incentivize people to go borrow and invest or spend capital. We now have kind of swung the other way, and we obviously have over 5.5% residential mortgage rates. What are you seeing in the market changing maybe between summer of 2021 and now summer of 2022?
Yeah, so I mean, real estate, you can't just lump it all together, but from what we're looking at, multifamily, 200 unit and up, Denver and West stuff we're buying, prices are off around 5 to 10%. And it's not because the fundamentals are slowing down. Rent growth I've never seen rent growth like this. I mean, we're seeing it in some markets, it's 20% year over year rent growth. The problem is the interest rates have risen so quickly, it just puts a damper on the returns when you do your modeling. And we're borrowing at now around 4.5% on a 10-year fix, whereas it was sub 3%, pretty recently.
Does that change your appetite to go buy things? That big of a difference?
Yeah, we're more cautious now. If we are buying, we're buying one deal now, we're buying it with only 55% loan. So very conservative, leverage amounts. We're still selling and exchanging, but on new cash, we're sort of very cautiously optimistic now. It's I think the inflation thing's a real story that should be.
How does that impact either assets you already own or assets you're looking at? So if there's high inflation, that's probably driving a lot of the rent growth, right?
Yeah, but eventually people aren't going to be able to afford these things, and the cap rates will rise too, and that puts a damper on values. So I think we've had a double whammy over the last 10 years of cap rates compressing, which means it's like multiples. The multiples expanding and rents growing. But now I think you're going to see the cap rates started popping up a little bit along with the interest rates. And if rent growth slows a little bit, there's going to be some issues, especially with some of these borrowers that are doing these short-term, like variable loans that are high leverage and stuff.
Do you think that there could be do you think that there could be a recreation of the 2008-2009 crisis where there's like over leverage in the system and prices go down and everyone's screwed, or do you think we're not there?
I don't think it will probably be at that level, but on the single family, because people generally on single family, for example, are putting more down payment and they're financially more secure in 06 or whatever, and everyone and their mom was able to get a mortgage, so I'd say I'm starting to see houses sit longer. It's going to lead to price cuts. The inventory is low though, so that'll help also soften the blow of, but definitely mortgage payments have doubled. Like, I was lucky enough, I refied my house and I locked rate right before this run up, but it would have doubled my mortgage payment if I didn't have the luck of locking in time. And plus the stock market being down is a double whammy. People have less perceived wealth. I mean, it fluctuates, but right now, if they were worth $100, now they're worth $80. Or if they were in a lot of the tech-heavy stocks, maybe they're worth $50, $60 on that 100. So it's definitely, wealth is down.
There's a lot of real estate folks that I've talked to, or I hear their various kind of thoughts. Don't buy your primary home, rent, and then go buy the investment properties. How do you think about that? Is that good advice, bad advice? Is it case dependent?
Like when you're starting, like I always tell people, our investors, if they don't own their home yet, I think owning a home is a good thing. And certain countries, there's more renters versus homeowners. And at one time, I remember the stat was like, I think we were up to 69% home ownership before the 2009 recession. It dropped to like 60%. For every point of drop in home ownership, it was like 1 million new renter households that were formed. I think it's crept up a little bit, but I always recommend, it's stability, having a home, and it's generally people's largest investment because it's a forced savings, right? They pay the mortgage down over the years and it appreciates in value. And it depends where the home is at and stuff, but like in certain parts of LA, or probably all LA, would have been a great investment over the time. It just depends, like, if you need the quick cash to, do other things with. But if you have the cash out and you have the, amount of money to service the debt and then some, buy a house, I think it's okay.
You mentioned 10-year fixed rate debt earlier. Is that what you guys normally target?
Yeah.
Why that?
Yeah, primarily 10-year fixed. We could get a little longer term probably, but the negative thing is they have these big prepayment penalties on the loan. So, but we're a very conservative shop. So like we've been doing those since inception. And when we went to sell buildings, the buyers, they didn't want to assume those loans because they were above market interest rate. Now, we locked in a rate at 2.99. That's way below market. So it is, people would assume that, and it'll add a lot of value to the purchase, I think. But we did it really just to have sanity and know for 10 years this is your mortgage payment, and and it forces you to hold long term when you slap on those long-term fixed rate loans. And I think real estate, the way to create that wealth is holding buildings long term and playing the long game versus flipping.
When do you know to sell?
We've sold for different reasons. So the first few years we sold to create a track record. We did return capital to the investors versus exchanging. Nowadays we only try to exchange. We have that track record. We sold because some of the buildings are getting too old and have major, capital needs, and we'd rather exchange into newer buildings. And what other reasons to sell? If the loan's coming due and we feel like it's a good time to, place the money into something else, we'll sell. But typically, try not to sell too often.
I want to ask a couple of questions. You tell me if you can't talk about it or don't want to.
Yeah.
When you go to get a loan, how many financial institutions do you talk to? Do you make them compete with each other?
Yeah,
sure. How do you optimize as a real estate investor to make sure that you're getting the best?
We always go through a mortgage broker for sure. Typically. So if the investment sales team is like, let's say CBRE, we have contacts at CBRE that handle the mortgage brokerage and farming it out, making the different lenders compete to try to get the best price, terms, et cetera. yeah, we feel like that's a cost that's worth paying.
So you guys go through a broker, you don't do it directly.
Correct. Yeah.
Why you go through the broker?
Just because they make the lenders compete. And nowadays a lot of the loans we were getting were agency, Fannie and Freddie, but now we have life companies involved in the mix, banks, debt funds, like a lot of different lending institutions, and they really make them compete, and we get the best value for doing that.
When you look at a deal, what is like the one or two metric you think are the most important to pay attention to?
Yeah, we're into something that's an ideal deal for Gelt. We want to see it cash flowing from day one, or able to have meaningful cash flow fairly quickly through some kind of renovation program. We model conservative rent growth. Typically, we're not a pioneer, and we're not the first one to upgrade units in a certain market. We have comps that show that if we upgrade the unit, this is what the kind of rent we'll achieve. And we do it with moderate leverage. We try to hit like a 2.5 to 3x equity multiple over 10 years is sort of like with a conservative underwriting. That's what we're trying to hit. We've seen a lot greater than that just because of the market. I think during tough times you're going to see who are the real players and who could withstand the tough times, and versus the people that have just been momentum guys.
In a recent interview with the Hustle, you mentioned this like flight to quality that you saw during COVID. Explain that.
I think you're referring to like the property quality and stuff.
Like people, like there was a flight to quality in terms of what people were looking for.
Yeah, especially us. I mean, we saw a lot of struggles on the portfolio of the buildings that were more blue collar, lower income. Collections were lower in those kind of markets. So we sort of peeled off some of these troubled buildings that were having hard collection issues, and also the deferred maintenance and CapEx needs, and exchanging it to a lot newer vintage buildings and better locations where collections remain a lot higher. Those people weren't as affected by COVID with job loss. And we also are trying to buy in more areas with higher barriers to entry, like Southern California as well.
When you have a deal, how much cash do you try to keep in the bank? And I'll measure it maybe in like months of covering a mortgage, or if there is some sort of downturn, et cetera. Is this something that you think of it somewhere like an individual? Hey, we need 3 to 6 months of like a rainy day fund, or how do you think about
we
that?
definitely keep a reserve, like slush fund, rainy day fund. I learned that early on from my mom, actually, who did some real estate investment. And my parents own some properties, and they're like, you always want to have that reserve. So it's not like a definite number. It differs deal by deal. We'll let it drop a little bit over time if the deal is really doing really well and it's in good shape. But yeah, we typically on these large deals we'll keep at least $1 million or so, like in the bank, sitting there, so we have a lot of cushion and room to go before we have to do any capital call. We've never had a capital call in the history of our firm. On some of the construction projects, we've gone over budget and we've lent personal capital to the deal, so we don't have to go to the investors and bother them. But we've prided ourselves on never having a capital call and never losing a dollar of principal for the investors. And we plan to keep it that way.
I love that. I asked for questions from Twitter, and they did not disappoint, as I'm sure you know. So I'm just going to read through, and we'll do kind of rapid fire here. Tyler Hogue said, how can you assess whether a real estate investor is any good when essentially everyone made money over the last decade?
Yeah, that was a great question. I like that one from Tyler. I think there's a lot of people that have made a lot of money just from leveraging up like crazy, and the market's been good. But during the tough times coming up pretty soon here, you're going to see who's whatever this Buffett's saying is swimming
water goes out.
Yeah, when the water goes out. So I think, and there's some people that actually were in the wrong kind of asset classes. Not everyone in real estate made money. Most of the people in multifamily did. But I know people that if you look at some of these office tower trades, they're trading for lower dollars than they were 10 years ago. Even like it just depends on the type of real estate you've been buying. But we've had tailwinds in multifamily, with huge rent growth, and I think definitely the more conservative shops like us that are planning to be multi-decade, and we're always prepared for the worst. We're going to be able to go through these tougher times versus people that are more transactional, buying and selling and flipping. And so far, those groups are okay, but they could have a world of pain if things change with this. It seems like it's happening right now.
Omar Morales asked, is he a net seller or net buyer this year?
That's a great question. So Omar's my buddy here in Bercadia, here locally in Miami. Great guy. Shout out to Omar, hardest working broker I know. 28 years old, very successful, very curious. Love that guy. I'd say net seller probably. We have a lot of properties on the chopping block. Most of them we're going to try to exchange though, so that produces a buy. But yeah, I know some very smart groups that have a different structure. They're more fun and stuff, and they've been net sellers, especially in this very low cap rate environment. They were selling stuff last year for like 3 caps and everywhere, even in the Midwest and stuff, where historically you don't see a lot of rent growth. So some of the smartest money I see are selling right now.
Yeah. Adi asked, if you could go back in time and change one decision you've made along the way, which one would it be and why?
It's a great question. The one that eats away at me the most is selling our Phoenix portfolio. We had 2,500 units in Phoenix. We sold in around 2017. Values have over doubled since then. And I mean, everything we then use that money to buy has gone up too, but like Phoenix has been on fire and that sort of burns me. We'll be back in that market at some point, but you know, that's the one that got away.
Yeah, that's okay. You did okay.
Yeah.
Bjorn Matines asked, what's your opinion about fractionalized real estate investments through NFT technology?
That's an interesting one. I mean, I don't know enough to talk about that, but I think there is, you know, real estate's sort of an industry that doesn't change much with technology too quickly. There are some interesting kind of prop tech companies out there and stuff. It's gonna be interesting to watch. We'll see if is that the killer use case. How's that going to work? I see a lot of like decks on people trying to do stuff like this, but none of them have taken off really yet. But we'll see.
Ricky, excuse me, Ricky Schmidt asked, I'm a real estate broker in Charleston, South Carolina. Currently, there's 1,700 houses in inventory. The average pre-pandemic was 5,500 to 6,500, so about 20% or so. Loaning standard and home equity is higher than ever. Soften from euphoria, yes, but where do people think the inventory to crash the market will come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah,
I got like the smartest audience on Twitter.
Oh man, you got some good people following you for sure. I'd say, yeah, the inventory percentage-wise, it shot up a lot, but historically it's still very low. He's saying, but they're you know, I don't know if it'll be inventory that crashes the market or just if the rates just keep rising. I mean, that's going to put a damper on home values, and I think it'll damper the crazy growth we've seen in home values, and it might even lead to some, not just softening, but some decline in value. But definitely, yeah, you need to see probably more inventory. But that's a big percentage jump, and it could continue probably.
Yeah. Somebody who they're not actually using a name said, for a couple with young kids who wants to buy a house in the next couple of years, what are some recommendations to prepare that we might not think of? They're already trying to get out of debt, raise their credit score, and increase income, but what else could they be doing?
Just buy a house within your means, right? I mean, you don't want to buy something bigger than you could chew that you're like struggling to make the mortgage payment, and like you want to sort of live under your means, and then you could always buy a bigger house at a future date, right? Like, don't like. One of my mentors is like, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, the house or the real estate could be worth less than you pay for it, but who cares? In the long run, it's going to be worth more. And in terms of income producing property, the cash flow is going to be a lot greater over the years. And you got to have that long term mindset. Same as the stock market, right? If you're buying a good company and you got to set it and forget it, right? Like you could be down. All the best companies have had big drawdowns over the years. I mean, the most notable one, Amazon had like a 90% drawdown. I don't know how many people had the stomach to withstand that and hold it, but if you did, you'd be up gazillion %. You know?
Yeah, Bezos did.
Yeah, Mr. Bezos did, and look at him now, big Bezos.
Exactly. Veronica Y, who says, my country is a developing country where population is still growing stably. We've never experienced a housing market crash like in the U.S. Investment in property is still deemed a safe haven. And then she says, is U.S. property investment still a good investment due to U.S. declines of population? And maybe I'll edit a little bit of like, how do you think about real estate along with population growth or contraction?
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes we made is we bought in a small community where there was flat population. It wasn't growing, and we weren't able to really push rents aggressively. It was when we were trying to go into the mobile home park space with a big bash, and we bought like a 400 space 3-park portfolio in rural Pennsylvania. And, you know, at the time it looked good on paper, but there was no rent growth. So we try to buy in areas that are growing. And, you know, there are cities in the US that are shrinking. We try to avoid those kind of areas. We try to buy in areas that are growing, and if they have higher barriers to entry, that's even better. So, but real estate in the U.S. is a safe haven. We have a lot of international investors that park money here because of our political stability, and maybe they could have higher returns potentially in other kind of developing countries. But U.S. is like, I mean, I'm biased, but I think the best country, the safest place to park capital still, and I think it'll continue to be.
Somebody named Scamballs on Twitter asked what you think about metaverse real estate and will you buy some?
I mean, I like the concept of NFTs, and I think there's gonna be a lot more cool companies that are formed with really killer use cases. And I'm an early adopter. I bought my CryptoPunk I don't even know. I first heard a podcast with what's his name? One of these big VC guys that was talking about it. Kevin
Rose.
Kevin Rose, yeah. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I had a few bucks in Coinbase sitting there, and I'm like, doesn't bring me much enjoyment. And this little CryptoPunk NFT, it's like art, and I bought that, and it went up like 10x, and then it's back down. But with the metaverse and land, I mean, there's I don't know. I feel like there's unlimited. It could just create more and more. Just like you could create more and more NFTs. That's why I'm like, I only buy the iconic one, like one of the first projects. I'm not going and buying any, PFP 10,000, I think there's gonna be a gazillion of them, but there'll be some, over the decades, things that were done early on that'll be like, wow, has historical value and people, relate to it and like it. But I haven't bought any land in the metaverse and stuff, but I feel like with there's gonna be more Facebook, they changed their whole name to Meta, right? They're betting the future on that, and it's coming, with the glasses and being out and about and having, the augmented reality and different forms of advertising to people, and it'll make life. It's gonna be different for sure.
Yeah. Punk 3054 asked, "What your worst decision in business?" We'll hold the answer you already said, but your best decision in your personal life.
Ooh, that's a great question. Best decision in my personal life was marrying my wife.
I was gonna say, man, you gotta say that. Yeah. You're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, no, I mean,
she's fantastic.
I totally married up. I mean, I love that we created this together. She's like my biggest fan. I push her. She pushes me. We've created a beautiful life together with 3 amazing children. We work together pretty much. She spearheads all of the ground up development for us. Her projects that she spearheads are some of her best performing ones. You don't see a lot of female developers, and I think she's very conservative in nature and always plans what's the worst case scenario. And she's hit it out of the park. She buys in areas that are changing, and she follows where all the restaurants are going and sees where they're getting permits and stuff. And she's really early, and she's a prolific developer. She's done really well, and she's an amazing person.
4 to 8 asked, at what point during lockdowns and panic did Keith and Gelt realize that they would bet big on LA when everyone else was leaving? And then the second question is, work-life balance possible, actually possible?
Yeah, so the first question, so when did we start doubling down on LA? We already had a few projects in LA, and during LA, actually, our collections remained pretty robust. Our buildings in LA are pretty high quality and either newer or major renovations, and they did well. And we're like, yeah, we just started seeing these other markets that got crazy, heated, and valuations going kooky, and we're like, let's just start buying more, doubling down on not just LA, but core infill SoCal. I mean, we bought some great deals in Long Beach and Anaheim, and we're looking in, all these sort of core Southern California markets where I feel like there's less bidders on stuff now. And, I think things are the pendulum swings. LA and SoCal, it's always going to be a great place for people to live and raise family. And you have some influx of people leaving, but I think you're going to have new people come in.
There was another question here. What were the trigger points that you used to increase your team size? When did you know to grow?
Oh, that's a great question. I forgot the work-life balance on the last one. Work-life balance, I'm a professional delegator, so I think I've created that work-life balance, and I get to work the hours I want when I want, and that's what true financial freedom and wealth is, right? I have an excellent team that are killers in the different departments that they're in. But I think that whole remote work, we're still remote. I'm allowing the team to be remote, And I think they're enjoying it. They don't have the hour commute each way. They're able to pick up their kids if they want it this hour. They're working probably more hours, but on their own time and terms. Not every job you could do that, obviously. Some have to be in person, with other people, and dealing with customers that come in or clients or whatnot. But I'm a big believer in giving people flexibility, and they're still held accountable and doing great work though for us. So I think work-life balance is it's achievable, but you got to really manage your time properly, especially when you have kids and stuff. But I feel like I'm so much better working in the hours I do work. I'm not fooling around as much, really working.
Growing team size?
Team size, yeah, we just kept hiring when we had holes and we needed, more people. So like, it's pretty scalable, my business, because I don't do property management. We outsource that. That requires the most people. We would have probably 250 people if we did property management. We have 20. I'd rather have a smaller team and not have to deal with personnel issues, hiring, training, firing. And that's what has helped us scale and really focus on finding good investments and letting the day-to-day, collection of rent, fixing, repair, and maintenance. We oversee the property management company, and make sure they don't overspend. And every major ticket item we have to approve. And we oversee the major CapEx items. But the day-to-day operation, we let them do it, and we pay them a fee. But yeah, we haven't hired that. I mean, we have 20-some people, and every year we add like one or two. It's not like a huge need to hire up and stuff, which I like. We have a ton of applicants, people that want to work with us, and we got to be choosy on who we pick.
I have two more questions. One of them is business related and one is personally related. But on the business front, your Twitter bio just says one word: compounding.
Yeah.
Why? What is it about compounding? Why is that so important, and why is that enough to put as the only word in your Twitter bio?
Yeah, man. I like it, keeping it simple, sweet, and to the point. I believe everything in life, the best things in life are compounding. Relationships, obviously investments. I even got my tattoo recently. You see this little chart up to the right? That's compounding, baby. That's what we do. Each one of these is there's 5 of us, for the 5 of us in our family, so it's double meaning. But I feel like consistent, every day you put in the work and make little progress every day. And then it's like you look back 10 years and it's pretty amazing. You don't see it day to day, but over the decades you see like, wow, this is tremendous growth, So I think compounding is everything in life. Just being long-term. Most people are not long-term thinkers. Sticking to the plan. We talked about Bezos. You got Elon Musk, like just sticking to the plan. And, Elon Musk had that master plan he put out there right when he started. And it's been the same since day one. He kept focused on doing that, starting with the first car, the Roadster, and then the Model S. And he had a whole plan on what he was going to do, and he stuck to it. And the best thinkers are just ones that are persistent and don't give up and just keep compounding over time.
I love it. One of our sponsors is 8 Sleep. What is your sleep schedule? What do you do? You I feel like have so much going on and you're so effective at it.
Yeah, it's tough with 3 kids that are waking me up at all hours of the night. The 21-month-old, he's crying for milk in the night, and then the 3-year-old he's lost his passy in his crib, or his blanket's not folded right. I mean, sleep is important. Not getting consistent sleep could make you a little deranged. I need to invest in an 8 sleep bed ASAP, and then some sleep training for our children. But I try to go to bed at a reasonable hour. I'm not one of those early.
What time?
I go to bed
o'clock?
probably 10, late 11 at the latest, and probably sleep till 6:30ish.
Yeah.
And
so you get 8 hours.
Yeah, pretty much. Try to get that. Yeah, I'm not. My body, I wouldn't function on 4 hours like some people could do.
Yeah.
Which is,
I used to be able to do that, and now no more.
Yeah, it's not worth it. I mean, you're better off getting a good night's sleep and being well rested and just crushing it during the day versus try to pack everything in.
I don't think that people understand the sleep thing until they do it. Like when you're younger, I actually think there's some like weird thing about like, I have so much to do at school. Like school in America starts so early compared to like many other places.
Way too early. Yeah.
And then it forces parents to get up because they got to wake the kids up and like all this stuff. But to some degree, once you realize the power of sleep, you're like, dude, this is amazing. What am I doing?
Yeah, I agree. We're transferring our kid to a different school, and it starts like an hour later, and it's gonna be better for us and her. Game changer, man. Yeah, that wasn't the reason, but it was like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. All right, where can we send people to find you on the internet or find out more about Gelt?
Just hop on the Twitter to shoot me a message, a DM. It's Keith _ Wasserman is Twitter. I'm active on LinkedIn is another one. Shoot me an email. It's keith@geltinc.com, GELTINC.com. I'm open book, and if you have any questions, just try to make it specific. I get a lot of people that are like, I have 10 to 15 minutes of your time, and I'm like, no, just go to Pomp's podcast. I'm on a lot of podcasts. You can go listen to me, but ask me specific questions. I'll give you specific answers. And I formed relationships with people over the years that have done that. So
I love it. I'm enjoying watching you have fun because I can tell that you're having fun doing.
You got to have fun, man. We're having fun here. I know you're a hardworking man. Back-to-back interviews. I'm probably number 3 or 4 for the day, but you got to have fun. You got it.
That's the whole key. All right. Well, listen. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I hope everyone enjoyed this. If you don't know shit about real estate, Keith's a great guy to follow on Twitter. That's it. That's all we got for you all. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.